Mountaineer Nation, let's ride.
But Don Nealon's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread. As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of WVU Football.
Here is Harris in trouble. Stiff arms the would-be tackler. Comes out over the 25 to 20. Goes around about at the 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
Takes the Slayton one-on-one with the defender. Look at Pat White.
West Virginia football. You know what that's about. They don't know what it's about. West Virginia football. Football, people. They can shoot up on fire. No more air and helmet.
Let them know. Leave no doubt tonight. Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Boot.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
And now, the show brought to you by Mountaineer fans for Mountaineer fans, the Country Roads Webcast.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into Season 6, Episode 162 of the CRW Podcast, here for our first game review and reaction episode of the 2023 WVU football season. Unfortunately, for the third consecutive year, it's coming after a season-opening loss for the Mountaineers, as West Virginia unfortunately fell to 0-1, as you all well know now, falling 38-15 to Penn State in the season opener there in Happy Valley. And joining me to discuss it, of course, is my lovely co-host. We've got Steven.
What's going on, everybody?
And Bradley.
What's up?
Well, gentlemen, I know we're going to break down the numbers a little bit on this one. We're going to dive into the stats, team stats, individual stats. We got a couple comments from Mountaineer Nation as well. We'll dive in on later in the episode. But before we do, just kind of free-form discussion. Our review episodes here are a little bit different than our preview episodes, not really segmented or anything, just more of a free-form discussion and then talking about the numbers, of course. But having said that, Brad, haven't really got a chance to hear your thoughts on the season opener yet, so we'll let you kick it off. What are you looking at following this game, both positives and negatives, I guess?
Yeah, and full transparency just for everybody watching. I got caught up at work last night, so I got to catch it in bits and pieces, Got to catch a good bit of the second half, and I was able to watch the first half this morning on YouTube some. So I feel like I got a good feeling for it, even though I didn't catch every single play. Penn State was a damn good team, let's say, and they looked like it. And I think going into it, we all knew that, which is why I think most of us, not all of us, predicted us to lose. Some of us thought we would cover that spread, and we came close to it, And so I think, feeling a little bit bummed out that maybe we didn't look exactly as crisp as we wanted, but ultimately coming out of there not discouraged, but also not all the way impressed either.
Yeah. That's kind of how I was feeling, immediately after the game. And even now, still I have, what I would call mixed feelings about the performance. Wasn't all bad. Certainly wasn't all good either, obviously, when you don't come out on the winning side of things. But, Steven, I know we discussed it, immediately following the game in our post-game reaction shows, which you guys that are listening or viewing this episode, be sure to check us out on the post-game shows immediately following the WVU football games. You can find those here streaming on YouTube. We'll be doing those all season. If you missed out on the first one, catch us on the next one. But have your thoughts changed any since then, Steven, or anything, you thought about since then that you wanted to add to what we discussed, previously?
No, I'm pretty much still what I would call indifferent about this team right now. I don't really know. I'm still saying 6-6 as of right now. I think that's still a pretty safe bet from what I've seen on the field. But I don't think that my feelings have changed drastically from last night. I think obviously following the loss, you're always, harsher on a team than what you should be, I guess. Once you can go back and watch everything and see how everything unfolded, instead of just reacting to it. But I'm still I don't know. I've got to see a lot more out of that secondary for me to believe that we can compete in a Big 12 conference that is just pass happy, year in and year out, and you're only facing more prolific offenses as you go throughout this season. So if last night we would have seen a more offensive problem than a defensive problem, and especially a secondary problem, then I would be a lot more optimistic than I am right now. But if that is our main issue, it's going to be a long year, in my opinion.
Yeah, because that's the one thing, the area that we knew we needed to improve on. One of the main areas was in the secondary, and that left a lot to be desired, and I think, credit goes to Penn State. One thing that was confirmed that we did talk about, Steve, and, I mentioned in that post-game discussion that I thought it kind of seemed like our plan was, let's stop the run game and we'll just sit back and try and, make Drew Aller beat us. And turned out, Neil Brown even mentioned that in his post-game press conference. That was kind of their plan, and I think Drew Aller showcased his skills, and he's going to really be a great player going forward in college football. I was really impressed by him and Penn State in general, what you guys, talked about as well. But speaking of press conferences, this is something that we didn't discuss because I didn't really pick up on it, during, or at least my naked eye didn't when I was watching the game. I think, some plays I saw it, but I think I thought it was more play specific than something they were doing altogether. But Lee Koba in his post game press conference mentioned that actually he played the will linebacker and Trey Lathan played the Mike linebacker for us in the game. Did you guys catch that?
I did not notice that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't notice it. Like I said, I wasn't really in tune with it, but that's kind of an interesting idea.
I mean, I obviously noticed Lee in on what seemed to be every single play on defense, but I know.
Yeah, and I mean Trey Lathan looked good, so that's
yeah.
But it's an interesting move, and like I said, yeah, I think it worked out. We'll pull up the numbers here in a minute, but I know Lee Koba led us in tackles, and he was in the double digits. But yeah, it was interesting because I thought, once he said that and I thought about it, I remembered watching, one play, just it kind of popped up in my head, and I saw Lee Kobe on the outside and Trey Lathan lined up in the middle. But like I said, I thought, it was just specific to whatever was happening in that play and didn't really think much of it at the time. But interesting development, and I thought that they were doing some different things there with the lineups. Like I said, I haven't got a chance to go back and rewatch the game yet. When I do, I'll be able to look at that more. But I thought that they were trying some different things defensively. And honestly, I really liked what I saw overall from the defensive line and linebackers personally.
I agree.
Yeah, I think the D-line in general, they looked better than what we had heard going into this. I thought Sean Martin looked like a man amongst boys out there, to be honest. I thought Sean Martin was often getting pushed. He was getting depth. He was making, creating havoc. And, the guy's monstrous. It's hard to not see him on the field. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And you could definitely tell he's having an impact in there, which felt really nice.
Yeah, so I think, run defense performed well when you had great running backs against, the Penn State had, and they kind of, like Neil Brown said, sold out to stop the run, and so they did a good job of that. But that secondary, as we said earlier, that still remains the question mark, and we'll see what happens moving forward throughout the season because it's going to definitely need to improve from what we saw here in this first game. Like I said, small sample size, so the verdict's still out on that one, I guess you could say, but definitely didn't look too much different from what we saw last year on the back end, and that's something that's going to have to change if West Virginia wants to, get to a bowl game or do better than that even.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when, you're not even seeing as big of a rotation as what we thought we would see. You know what I mean? It still just feels like a Neil Brown reluctance to try out different things. He's going to beat a horse to death to see if it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Neil Brown, this is going to have to just be a ongoing topic that we discuss throughout this season, of course, because you've already seen it following, just one game of this season. Fans coming out on the fire Neil Brown train already. I mean, as to be expected, I think. And, it's funny because a lot of those same people that are saying that probably weren't predicting West Virginia to win the game, but they come out and, don't win the game. And then people are on the fire Neil Brown train. But having said that, his seat was very hot at the end of last season. We know that coming into this year, and this year is make or break for him essentially. the first game's performance, following that, we talked about there were some positive things, some things you can build on, and there were certainly some negative things. We're talking about the secondary play now, but I think we're going to have to continue to gauge the temperature of Neil Brown's seat throughout this season. So, having said that, following game one of this season, in regards to Neil Brown, Steven, do you think his seat is hotter following this game than it was, heading into the season? Cooler, about the same? Where would you put that?
And from the perspective of the fan base, or from a perspective of the athletic department, or like the AD, Renbaker?
I was thinking more of the AD, but fan base wise, both. I guess they're both having.
Yeah, because I'm feeling kind of the same thing too, Steven.
Right. AD, I think it's unchanged. I think that Renbaker has not changed his opinion on that. Fan base depends on what fan base we're talking about, and what by that I think you guys already know what I mean. If we're talking about our actual fan base who follows the team, every game and actually watches the games, and follows them like we do and follows them through the off season, I think those fans are also unchanged. I myself am unchanged. It didn't change me one way or the other. Last night didn't. If you're talking about the Facebook West Virginia fan base, I think that they are absolutely livid right now, and I think that
Oh, man, don't
there's
even get me
nothing.
started.
The only thing that would change those fans' mind is an undefeated season and a national championship. I think anything else would be insufficient.
Yeah, you're right there. You're right there.
So,
Brad, what about you? Any other thoughts? You think Neil
Well, I
Brown's
mean,
seat's any
I
hotter
think
in
that,
your
like,
opinion?
yeah, as I say, for like me on a personal note, after that game, I would feel like his seat's a little bit hotter for me, not because he lost, but because he hasn't changed yet. You know what I mean? I know it's game one. This is game one, yeah, of the year of this team, but this is year 5 of Neil Brown, and I'm still seeing the same Neil Brown I've seen for the past 4 years. It's not different. It's not changing, and Insanity's doing the same thing over and over and over again, and expecting a different result.
well, that's a great point, Brad. Like that, honestly, if maybe swayed a little bit just thinking about it that way, because you would like to think that as a conservative play caller as he's been, be conservative until they're beating you, and then panic out and do whatever. He's not been aggressive enough to show me that he's trying to change.
Or you be exciting in the least. You know what I mean?
100%. That's exactly what I was about to say, because that's what I've been thinking about since the game, yesterday was whenever since Neil Brown has been here, have we gotten down, let's say more than a score, more than 7-8 points. We've gotten down 10 to 14 points, and you felt like, oh, it's okay. We got a quick strike offense. We'll get back in this quick. Whenever have you felt like that throughout his whole time here?
Not once.
Because it's been a nickel and diming
once.
for every touchdown we've ever gotten.
Not once, man. And that's my main issue is it's just the excitement is still not there. And I thought, with the running quarterback here and everything, it would be a little bit more exciting. And like I said, small sample size. I want to continue to, place that caveat in there because it still can change. They could come out and have great offensive performances the rest of the season, put up 500 yards a game and run some tempo, and it really, put on a show for the fans and shut me up here and prove me wrong. But from what we've seen so far from Neil Brown, that's not what we're going to see, I don't think. And in this game, Penn State's defense is great. I'm not trying to, negate that at all. But the offense, despite some new wrinkles they threw in, which, Stephen, me and you talked about this briefly, a lot of it was just more of the same Neil Brown that we saw back when he was calling the plays for the first 3 years.
Oh, I was just going to say, I do believe that we as West Virginia fans, watching what we've watched over the years, just from, 2000s up, we have been spoiled to, I guess, big play ability from what we've seen on the field. You know what I mean? You go from Rasheed Marshall throwing the ball like he did. You go to Pat White. You go to Geno. You go to Will Greer. We have seen prolific play, but not just quarterback position.
Skylar Howard and Shelton Gibson.
Right. Yeah. I'd be remiss to, not mention a lot of these other guys, but we have seen, elite level playmaking ability on West Virginia's field over the past, not just 2 decades, but, however far back you want to think about West Virginia football. We're not used to well, let's just be conservative and win a defensive game. Well, you're not going to do that either because we're not that good of a defensive team. And so I don't know. It's not just the fact that it's not exciting to me. If it wasn't exciting and we still were able to get something going on offense, I can handle that. But I mean, it's just, oh man.
Well, it's gone from being, exciting and stuff like you said, like Will Greer and them was probably the last time, to being, once we get down, 7-0 or whatever, it's okay. Let's hope we can just keep it close and let's not get blown out this game. That's literally the feeling that you get in the Neil Brown era.
Yeah,
I
and that's
think.
a horrible feeling.
How many?
And I would even.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Good.
I was just going to ask how many times we scored over 40 points in the Neil Brown era. But
Against a Power 5, you know what I mean? Like,
true.
we're to drop 55 on Duquesne.
I can't think of any.
I
can't think of any against Power 5 off the top of my head.
I don't know. We might wait for them to beat us.
Yeah, and so my thing is, like, and it's not even just like the play calling; it's also the reluctance to play freshmen. Like, you didn't see Rodney Gallagher, you got to see a little bit of Traylon Ray, some of these other guys that they've mentioned bringing in. You don't see Jacoby Spells. You're still not seeing them reach out there and branch and try to run those players as much. You know what I mean? And it's just, I don't know. That's the stuff that bothered me last year. When I look at it this year and thinking about whether his seat's getting hotter or not for me, I'm looking at these things that should be, at least getting a little bit better. You know what I mean? And so that's like the same Neil Brown stuff. Just like the reluctance to try to play anybody, give a young guy a chance.
Yeah.
Throw him out there. Even though Garrett Green was doing fine, why not try Nico Marchiol just to freaking see if he catches lightning in a bottle? You know what I mean?
Oh, they tried it once.
No, and not trying. Yeah, I was about to say not trying when it's in a terrible situation that he has no chance to succeed.
Yeah, maybe you play him
know,
more, and then it's not such an expected play when you put him out there for one play.
You want to know what Nico's career stats are for the WVU Mountaineers right now, fellas? One rush for negative 11 yards.
Yeah,
that's his,
and it wasn't his fault.
Stats. And it wasn't his.
That's not career. He played. He played against Oklahoma State in the.
Did he play last
year?
Yeah, I guess he did.
Well, 2023 stats anyway.
2023. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
But like, why not? You know what I mean? And I feel like that's just like a Neil Brown staple, and I'm just tired of it a little bit.
Well, he gets his. Neil Brown has his guys, and he doesn't want to make a change. He wants to ride with his guys, whoever they are. And I think that's going to show you this year. Like I said, I know it's only one game so far, but if he's still reluctant to make a change this year, in the year where his back's against the wall and it's make or break, and he's still not willing to play some of these young guys and get in some guys that can be more explosive, then he's never going to do it. So that should tell the athletic department something there in itself, because what we saw on offense, we have some really good players. CJ's great. The offensive line's great. Garrett can do some great things with his legs. I liked what I saw from Devin Carter, but we don't have a number 2 wide receiver right now, really. I mean, to be honest with you, I know Cortez Braham is on the depth chart, but he didn't really do too much in the first game. Hopefully he does throughout the rest of the season. But I think what we're really missing is just an explosive element on offense. I've learned since, we did the post-game show that EJ Horton was injured. That's why he didn't play, apparently. Hopefully maybe he can get back, and that'll bring you some speed. But right now, who on this team is a threat to beat the defense over the top?
I mean, not even that. We hear about Jaheim White all the time, right? You get these guys that are electric, speedy out there. You can throw it to them. They're catching, doing this, that, and the other. Where's it at, though?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Your back's against the wall. Pulling out all the tricks, all the tricks in your bag is not just running a double lateral backwards into a broken play pass. You know what I mean? Like that's not it. It's trying out a young guy that has, a bright future and has been hyped up. Give him a chance. You know what I mean? A guy that's only been here since June. Give him a chance.
Yep.
It's just to the point where you're so scared to try it because you're going to get blamed for it. Well, you're going to get blamed for it if you don't do it. So,
right.
Well, I don't believe that it's necessarily that we've got to be able to have an over the top bomb guy. I think that you've got to be able to just have guys that can consistently catch the ball. That way that you can keep the defense on their toes and you can be able to run it effectively. Because, I mean, even with a line like we have and with CJ and Jalen being as productive as they are, it only lasts for so long until that defense starts to cue on it.
And I agree with you, but let me ask a follow-up question to that. you said, guys being able to catch the ball and stuff, and maybe we have that. But my follow-up question is this: do we have a quarterback that can get it to him consistently, accurately, on time, make the right reads, and not just look at his first read, and when it's not there, take off, leave the pocket, and, when the play is there, miss entirely, like, a 4th down and 5 or whatever it was that comes to mind when you got a wide open slant and throws it, nowhere near the receiver, and that's I'm not saying that to just knock on Garrett Green, because he's not the only one we've seen that from. This is what, the 3rd or 4th quarterback we've seen have these same problems in the Neil Brown era.
Yeah, true fact.
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand. Year 5, we're giving him a break initially because it was, bringing in transfers. It was, you had to go get Austin Kendall and Daggy when Neil Brown has talked about he really likes dual threat quarterbacks, but he had to get who he could get. So he went with Daggy and Kendall, and then you go get JT Daniels. And of course, we know how that panned out, and it didn't work out very well either. And so now you have your guy that you've supposedly been in the program developing for 4 years now almost. He's a junior this season, and comes out in game 1, and we've talked about his, improved passing. And I guess that's the question, guys. Did Garrett Green look improved as a passer to you guys, or improved as a player that goes through his progressions and through his reads and doesn't come off them too quickly? Maybe at times, to me, just, I'm going to go ahead and answer for myself. Personally, at times he looked better, but I think overall he still lacked consistency, lacked accuracy, and maybe slightly improved, but I don't know if he's a quarterback that can win us more than 5 or 6 games that we've been seeing from Neil Brown at this point. Like I said, it's only been 1 game, but that's just how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
See, that one I feel like I am going to kind of like lean in towards Garrett Green getting caught in the moment. You know what I mean?
And I hope you're right.
Yeah, and I do think it's like 110,000 fans, bright lights. When you get in that kind of condition, like you kind of revert back to what your instincts tell you. You know what I mean? And so he's probably just like reverting back to, that base sense of style that the play that he has. And his more recent practice and stuff just like hasn't come through yet. But once you get into games like Duquesne and it's not as such high pressure, I do think that Garrett Green's going to look a little bit better. I mean, that was an elite defense. It's a lot. That was a tough game to go in there and try to look better. And so I think that he's going to look much better going forward. But, you're not wrong in the fact that we've not seen progression from a quarterback since they've been under Neil Brown. So,
and I think it's also kind of a little discouraging to have a quarterback with a baseball background who you would think would have an accurate, strong arm. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like even the long pass he completed to Devin Carter, that should have been a touchdown. I mean, and that thing came in there like it looked like a punt. Like Devin Carter looked like he was.
Yeah. So he almost gave it up.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he was just
Up
trying
there.
not to overthrow him because he was so wide open, and I understand that. But there were certain things that had me, scratching my head a little bit with that. And like I said, I'm not trying to knock on Garrett Green. I put out the top 5 highest offensive player grades video on our YouTube channel today. Check that out if you guys haven't already. And
I'm excited about that.
the highest, graded overall offensive player, spoiler alert, was Garrett Green. So, I mean,
57.4 passer rating, I think.
yeah, I mean, it was 85 over offensive grade, I think is what it was. And so it was by far the highest, because I think he was the only one on our offense that graded in the 80s.
Well, even
I think the
James
second highest was
Franklin.
like 78.
James Franklin in the post game, he even said their quarterback is really, really good. So, maybe we have a skewed view because we're looking at it through the view that we do. But from the outside looking in, it seemed like people had nothing but good things to say about the way that we handled ourselves and the composure that we showed from all around.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't want to bash on him at all. That's why I wanted to, point out that he had a good grade and also did a great job not turning the ball over. I think that's going to be a major key for him throughout this season. But, he also, and we talked about this a little bit, Stephen, he can't take near as many hits as he did in this game. I think he ended up carrying the ball, 15 plus times, plus got hit, quite a few times when he was dropping back. He won't make it through a full season, with his frame and body style taking that many hits. So that's something that they're going to need to fix there. But I do think Garrett Green, mean, the potential, you do see it. You see it in flashes. To me, it's just I need to see more consistency. That's all. That's what I'm hoping to see develop as this season goes on, is a little bit more consistency from Garrett Green. I think if he can do that, then he can be a quarterback that can be, good for us. He can be, that, like we talked about earlier, that Skyler type quarterback, I think. That's kind of who he resembles to me. I think Skyler had a little bit better arm, definitely a little bit better deep ball. Skyler had, that beautiful deep ball, but Garrett could be that type of quarterback, if the stars align.
Yeah, I think that as hard as this game was for us, I think that it's only going to bode well for us going into this season and playing them in the first game, because you're not going to face an environment for one like that again this year. You're not going to face a defense again like that this year. You're going to face better offenses, that's for sure. But I think that if we can get, I'm fairly sure that it's a zone problem on our defense, on our secondary side. I don't think that it's a talent issue. I don't know why I'm so firm in that belief, but I swear you don't see those guys consistently that wide open unless it's a zone issue. So I believe if we can get some of those issues fixed, we should be okay. But I do think that playing them and playing such a good team in such a great environment early will help a team like us.
Yeah, especially once you get some momentum going and actually get the team fully believing into it, then like anything's possible, But they definitely learned a lot coming out of this game.
Yeah, I believe so too.
Well, and this is, we're hitting the crucial stretch of the season right here, because I think the first game, like we said, mixed bag, some things that were positive, some things that we were disappointed with. But overall, the result is kind of what we ultimately expected, right? I mean, we all picked us to lose to this game. We had it a little bit closer, but be it our season prediction roundtable predictions or the preview show, we all had Penn State winning this game. So up to this point, the season's kind of gone the way that we thought it would, win-loss wise. So these next 3 to 4 weeks are really going to be a telltale sign of not only the future of this team and how they're going to proceed through this season, how successful they may or may not be, but I think it's going to really be a big barometer of what the future may hold for Neil Brown, because West Virginia plays 4 more games here in the month of September. They play 5 games to start off September. The next 3 here are all at home. Ideally, you'd love to go 3-0 at home with, of course, getting the revenge on Texas Tech and winning in the backyard brawl. Obviously, we're expecting the win over Duquesne. So if you can do that and get to 3-1, then, taking on a tough TCU team, that would set up a big matchup there on the road. And Neil Brown could maybe win some people over. Then if he could do those things, get these wins at home, and then go on the road and show some people that he can win on the road. I think maybe come October, people could change their tune on Neil Brown if the stars align, like I said. So I wanted to just bring some optimism back and talk a little bit about a silver lining, because I feel like I've just been harping since, the end of that game, because, like I said, there was some takeaways that I didn't like in regards to, coaching and play calling and stuff. But like I said, it's only one game and we still got a lot ahead of us.
Yeah, and we got to call them how we see them. That's the reason we do this show, right?
Absolutely. That's the fun of it. That's the fun of it. But before we get into some numbers, gentlemen, I'm going to pull up the stats here on the screen. We'll talk about some team stats and individual stats. But before we do anything else, you guys want to touch on in regards to the season opener that we didn't touch on there?
I think I'm ready to move.
All right, let's pull up some numbers here, and we'll talk some stats from the season opener, both team and individually for the Mountaineers. But before we do that, just wanted to take some time out to say we appreciate everyone that's tuning into this episode, whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening to it on any podcast platform as well. You can find the Country Roads Webcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. Just search Country Roads Webcast. We appreciate you listening there. But if you're viewing this on YouTube, whether it be on our channel or on the WV Sports Now channel, as you can find our show on the web at wvsportsnow.com, where you'll find all kinds of great Mountaineer sports content. Do us a favor while you're here tuning in. Hit the like button. Give us a thumbs up on the video. It really helps not only its performance, but future videos performances here on the channel. And if you're a WVU fan, be sure to subscribe. Helps us, helps you, helps get this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, let's take a look at some numbers from the season opener for the Mountaineers. As you see here on the screen, if you're watching on the video side, Penn State picked up 10 more first downs than the Mountaineers, 27-17. West Virginia struggled on third downs, but Penn State didn't do the best on third downs either. 3 of 9 for the Nittany Lions, 4 of 14 for the Mountaineers. West Virginia 50% on their fourth down attempts, 3 of 6. So 6 times Neil Brown went for it on fourth down in this game. Penn State 1 of 1 on their lone attempt. Total yards, West Virginia ended up at 308, Penn State 478. Passing yards, Penn State really put up some numbers here. Like I said, Drew Aller really was impressive. Keandre Lambert-Smith did a lot of damage in the receiving game, including a couple touchdowns. I ended up as a total of 332 passing yards for Penn State, where West Virginia only ended up throwing for 162. Rushing yards actually ended up dead even, 146 for each team, that being on 35 carries for Penn State and 40 for West Virginia. Penn State only called for 1 penalty in the game. West Virginia was called for 5 for 55 yards. So not bad for West Virginia on penalty yardage. I thought they did better, in the amount of penalties. Unfortunately, they were still the more penalized teams. And unfortunately, a couple of those were really costly and brought back some big runs. But time of possession was an area you wanted to see West Virginia win in this game. And they did manage to do that, holding on to the ball for 31 minutes compared to Penn State's 28. But team stats wise here, guys, anything that stands out to you guys here looking at these numbers?
I don't know. I don't know if we can get individualized stats on that, but I'm pretty sure all 5 of those penalties for us came in the second half. I do believe at halftime we didn't have any penalties.
That sounds right.
So a lot of that could be contributed to some noise, but even still, I know it's 5 for 55 yards. I can live with that. I think last year, I'm pretty sure last year in the pit game, we were well over 10 penalties for over 100 yards.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's an improvement at least. The thing that bothers me about it is, some of them were costly. The one that stands out to me was the illegal procedure on the big run when it was, I think that was, I believe, the first drive we had of the second half
Big
after we'd
momentum
gotten
killer.
because we'd forced Penn State into a 3 and out, and then we broke a big run, 15, 16 yards, something like that. And then legal procedure brought it back, and then drive, spun out from there and never got going again. So I think it's an improvement, but would love to not have them in those critical situations still yet. Brad, what about you? Anything here, penalties or anything else stand out to you, team stats wise?
Just like the 6 yards per pass, just is kind of sad. You know what I mean? When your passes are getting as much as like what you would hope a first or second down run would get. So that's pretty sad when you're looking at it.
Yeah, I think that for me, that a lot of that was especially early in the game. Finally late in the game, they started, throwing downfield a little bit. But I know the first 2 or 3 drives, I don't think we threw a ball further than 5 yards downfield, and I was very concerned about that. And that's something they're gonna have to do it. They're gonna have to throw the ball downfield.
Yeah, especially playing in the conference that we play in. I think that's something that I don't know if we've been mentioning enough is the Big 12 is an offensive conference, and we aren't very good offensively. You're not going to be a very good team in that conference.
I'm hoping to see a little bit more from the offense. But speaking of the offense, let's look at the individual stats for the Mountaineers. We'll look at the offensive side first. Garrett Green, 16 of 27 for 162, the 6 yards per completion average we talked about there. 57.5 QB rating. Rushing wise, you get 18 for 81 for CJ Donaldson. Thought he looked great. 4.5 yards a carry. Ended up with a touchdown. Green goes over 70 yards as well. 15 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Jalen Anderson only ends up with 5 carries, 7 yards. And then, of course, we talked about Nico, the 1 carry for negative 11 yards. So I think ideally maybe you'd like to see Garrett Green get a few less carries, put a few more in Jalen Anderson's hands, get some for Justin Johnson. And, of course, we talked about hopefully getting Jaheim White involved. But then receiving-wise, 6 catches for 90 yards. Devin Carter, I thought, looked the part of a number 1 wide receiver for the Mountaineers, and hopefully continues to improve. Cole Taylor, 2 catches, 31 yards. Jalen Anderson, 2 catches, 15 yards. Jeremiah Aaron, 1 ball, 8 yards. Preston Fox, 1 ball, 7 yards. Traylon Ray, 2 catches, 7 yards. CJ with a catch for 3 yards. And then the other tight end, Traylon Davis, with a catch for 1 yard. For me, for these individual numbers, I think it's, the passing game that I got to point out again. But it's the receivers, because outside I think Devin Carter and Cole Taylor, who I thought looked kind of how we expected them to look. Looking at these numbers, just no one else really stands out for West Virginia receiving wise. You get a Jalen Anderson as a running back with a couple of catches, Traylon Ray with a couple of catches, but got to get some other receivers involved, I think. Goes back to what I said earlier. Don't really feel like we have a second option at receiver right now. If, the second option is kind of our tight end, Cole Taylor, it looks like. But from these individual stats, rushing, passing, receiving, what stands out to you, Steven?
I do like that we're getting our tight ends involved a little bit more. And his stats don't really pop off of the chart, but CJ looked a lot better on the field than he does on the stat sheet, in my opinion. But other than that, nothing really too impressive. I got to see Devin Carter 6 for 90 yards. That's okay, but then the most you have is 2 receptions by any other guy that did make a catch in the game. We've got to see more consistency out of our receivers, and not only Garrett Green. You can't put it all on him, but you got to. I remember one specifically to Traylon Ray that was over the middle, and he just dropped the pass. I think we talked about it last night.
Yeah,
it was a little
that
bit
was late
of
in the game. Yeah,
it was a little bit of an underthrown ball. It was thrown behind him a little bit, but as a receiver, wide open across the middle, you got to catch that ball. So and I was taught as a receiver. I play quarterback and receiver, and I was always taught as a receiver. If your finger touches the ball, you catch the ball. I always hated that rule, but that's what they've always said.
That's true. That's what they say. Indeed, I agree. I think CJ, I would give him more carries. I know you got limited carries to go around, and I'm over here complaining about us not getting Jaheim White involved, and Jalen Anderson not getting his carries either. But I think CJ Donaldson, just the back that he is, I think he's only going to get better as the game goes along. I would give him at least 25 touches a game, but that's just me. Brad, what about you? What do you think here as far as offensive statistics, individual that stood out to you?
Yeah, no. Honestly, it's just like you guys had said, there's no really spreading around in the wide receiver room. There's just no real options. I mean, you look across the board, that's ideally what you want to see, 4 catches, 7 catches, 4 catches, 2 catches, 1 catch with 22 yards, They only caught 1 ball, but it was a meaningful ball. You know what I mean? 1 catch, 15 yards. That's the first down, And when you're getting 3.5 yards a catch with, Traylon Ray, or just getting 7 yards, 8 yards, it's just not cutting it.
Yeah, because, I mean, just looking at the numbers, I mean, Cole Taylor and Devin Carter is the only people that had to catch longer than 10 yards.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not gonna do it.
Devin Carter didn't really, other than the one in the beginning of the game. I don't think he made a meaningful catch until late in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, you say 1 catch. You could also say the same thing about Keandre Lambert-Smith, but you take 1 catch out for 37 yards, and then you're left with 5 catches for 50-some yards, and it's just not feeling the same,
Yeah, true. Especially when you don't get any of your receivers into the end zone, and I know we're going to be a predominantly run team, and our scores came down there at the goal line. So, but you still want to see the receivers get involved and be able to be guys that can make game-breaking plays, because that's one thing that they've talked about is wanting to be more explosive, right? That's been a major key for them. Let's get more explosive on offense. No explosive plays essentially for West Virginia. I think they may have had 1 play over 20 yards, but certainly didn't have any over 30, any over 40.
No,
that's Devin Carter's catch.
Yeah. But that's like I said, offense. I'm still on the fence about it. Like I said, verdict's still out for me. Penn State's defense is really good, so we'll see. I don't know how much we'll learn from Duquesne, but I think the offense has potential. I'll say that.
Well, and one thing too, I don't know if it's a real safe option for your quarterback and your number 1 running back to have almost the same amount of carries for about the same amount of yards. I mean, they both had a touchdown, but
yep,
I mean, their stats are almost identical rushing. You got CJ with 1881, average for 4.5 yards a carry, a touchdown, and his long was 17. Garrett's was 15 carries for 71 yards, 4.7 for his average carries, a touchdown, and 15 was his long.
Yeah,
so they're only differing in 2 on each of those.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's almost identical. You got to give some of those to CJ or some of those to Jalen. I think Garrett, he's going to, some of those you're not going to be able to manage because they're going to come off scrambles, him making something happen, which I thought was really good for West Virginia. And it can be good throughout the season. That's a weapon. Third down, everything's covered and he can scramble and pick up, 6, 7 yards when you're having on 3rd and 5. That's awesome. And he did that a lot in the game. So he's going to do that on his own. So I think, design runs, maybe only do 5 to 7 design runs for him because he's going to have another handful where he takes off on his own.
When was the last time you seen a game with no turnovers on either side of the ball? That's kind of wild.
Well, we should add a couple. I'll say that. And for as bad as we're talked about the secondary, I did like Beanie Bishop, some things he did on both those plays. That he nearly had. Both those were in his hands. He should have at least had one of them, but made good plays on the ball on those.
Yeah, I mean Aubrey Burks, even though it led to a touchdown, like he tried to knock the ball down instead of just going for the safe play.
Yeah, he went all out. I mean, when the guy lays out, I can't be mad at him. And speaking of Aubrey Burks and Beanie Bishop, let's look at the individual defensive stats here. I won't run through all these. I'll just kind of name some of the standout ones. And that, of course, Lee Koba, we talked about it briefly earlier, 13 total tackles to lead the team, 7 of those solo, including a tackle and a half for a loss. Beanie Bishop, 7 tackles, 5 of those solo, a half a tackle for a loss that he shared with Anthony Wilson, who had 5 tackles. 6 tackles for Trey Lathan, who we talked about, really looked like a bright spot, I think, playing that Mike position we've learned since the end of the game. Jared Bartlett with 5 tackles, Andrew Wilson-Lamp with 4 tackles, 3 tackles each for Montre Miller, Sean Martin, and Hershey McLaurin. That goes for also Malachi Ruffin in that group with 3 tackles. Lance Dixon and Mike Lockhart with a couple. Get a tackle for a loss from half a tackle for a loss, from Devon Hawkins, who also deflected a pass. Tomey got the sack in the TFL as well. So looking through the defensive numbers, guys, what really stands out there to you off the top, Brad?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Trey Lathan, right? Like the fact that just he's stepping in there playing big boy ball so early on. Really looking like honestly, he was a really highly touted recruit coming out of high school. So it's nice to see him come along, especially at a position of need when we thought that's somewhere we were going to be really weak at. So I think that's a really big upside.
Yeah, I agree. Steven, what about you?
I'm going to say Beanie Bishop, man. I know that we've seen Beanie in there on a few pass breakups. I know you mentioned the 2 that he could have had intercepted, but I didn't realize that he was in so much on the tackling so much. So that one a little bit shocks me that he's the second leading tackler on the team.
Yeah.
But also Andrew Wilson-Lamp. I think I liked what I saw out of him mostly last night.
Yeah.
Room for improvement, obviously, but mostly I liked it.
Yeah, I think from what I saw, I like both those 2 guys. I think that if both those continue to develop, they're going to be solid as your starting corners for the Mountaineers, which is how it looks like it's going to be. And I think for as much as we've talked about, the coaching staff saying this and saying that, and it's a lot of coach speak that never comes to fruition, looking at the defensive numbers and some of the things that stood out in this defensive performance positively, albeit there was, several negative things that I think we've covered a lot. The people that they've talked about that they thought would be really good transfers in for the Mountaineers showed up in this game. Day Hawkins, you see there with the half a tackle for loss and had the pass deflection that nearly led to the Beanie Bishop interception. Beanie Bishop, we've talked about with the near interceptions, the pass deflection. And I think that he's going to be a weapon in the return game as well. Didn't get a chance to return any of those kickoffs in this game, but in the future, look out for him there also. And then Anthony Wilson, they talked about him, modeling his game after Carl Joseph. I saw him lay the wood a couple of times, ended up with 5 tackles of his own and a half a tackle for loss. So I think all 3 of those transfers in were guys that they talked about that could be guys that were disruptive. And I think that they showed that they really could be this season for the Mountaineers.
Mm-hmm. And Tomey as well.
Yeah, Tomey Wadirje, can't leave him out, especially being as young as he is, being a redshirt freshman. I was wondering how much they would play him, and when he got in there, he made an impact right away with an impressive sack. So that's a guy that can be a weapon in the future for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, so there are positives on the defensive side of the ball. You just gotta know where to look.
Yeah, exactly. It's not all bad. The sky's not falling. Exactly. The sky's not falling, guys. Indeed. But wanted to talk about some of those numbers after we gave some of our thoughts. but also put out on social media here and on our YouTube page to get some of your all's thoughts. We like to do that here on the podcast occasionally, just kind of gauge where things are for Mountaineer Nation, for ourselves, for those that tune into our show and follow us anyway. Put out here, we said, Mountaineer Nation, it's the day after the first game of the season. Let us know your WVU football thoughts, concerns, or takeaways, and we would share some on this episode. And here we are doing just that, and got a couple responses here that we wanted to share. One coming from Gordon Spencer, 6656. He states he's proud of them and feels they played a good game. Most thought they wouldn't score, and it'd be a complete blowout. Let's go Mountaineers. I appreciate you there, Gordon, chiming in there. And Zachary 4294 said, play calling on offense was horrible and thought Green didn't look comfortable throwing, but we played hard and the defense was better than I thought. In regards to those comments, I would say, Gordon, I think that they definitely, some of the outsiders, they probably impressed. And to Zachary, I would agree on a lot of the play calling. I've kind of given my thoughts on Green, but I will say this team, to me, that's one thing I will say, is they do look like they have a chip on their shoulder. They do look like they're going to play hard and continue to fight, because they continue to fight in this game to the very end. And they have some guys that are really scrappy on this team, I think. But in regards to these couple comments, Steven, anything you want to add to in response to Gordon or Zachary here?
No, I kind of agree with both of them. I'm proud of the hard fought battle that they showed. I'm proud of, like you said, the chip that they played on their shoulder. I think that's one positive I can take away from Neil Brown in the post game, was that they were, more or less asking if he was discouraged in his team after that, and he was very, steadfast in remaining that he's, I know we're going to be who we're going to be, and we're going to win football games this year. So, I will say that I'm proud of the way that they fought, but I'll also agree with what Zach said and saying that the play calling has been and is still horrible. Um, uh, Green, I don't think at times, I guess he didn't look comfortable, but I mean, I think that most of that was the environment, but I don't know.
I'm hoping
Yep,
so.
spot on.
I'm
My
hoping
thoughts
so.
too.
Yep. Brad, anything else?
Nah, man, that's exactly how I feel about it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree too. It's the verdict's still out, and as Neil Brown said, West Virginia still has a chance to win plenty of games, throughout the remainder of this season. Uh, that's the silver lining. This wasn't a conference game, and the Big 12 looks to be wide open this season. I think that it's got a great chance for West Virginia to make some noise there. Let's look around the conference, gentlemen, at the other scores that happened in the Big 12 this week. Thursday, of course, it kicked off with UCF dominating Kent State 56-6.
John Rice Plumlee, the dog.
Yeah, John Reese Plumlee's a good player. I love that guy. And, of course, I love Gus Malzahn's offense, too.
Yeah, that too.
And then Friday, Kansas with the 48-17 win over Missouri State. Still no Jalen Daniels, sitting him out. Still Jason Bean got the run there, but they got the 48-17 win. And then, of course, the Saturday slate. We know the Mountaineers result. We've discussed it extensively at this point, pretty much. Texas hands Rice the 37-10 defeat. JT Daniels did not look so hot for Rice Owls in that game.
No, he did not.
And then Kansas State 45-0 win, the shutout win over Southeast Missouri. And of course, we talked briefly about Coach Prime impressing Colorado, shocking the college football world, coming away with the 45-42 victory over TCU. Guys, I know we talked about this a little bit, but I mean, I can't not talk about, Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders. Shadur Sanders, his first game ever at Colorado, breaks the school record for passing yards. And then Travis Hunter playing over 100 snaps, plays both sides of the football, gets over 100 yards receiving, couple of touchdowns, one interception, nearly had another. How about Colorado, guys?
Oh man. Well, you know what I keep thinking about, guys, is what Colorado did with this. Not just from seeing Travis Hunter do what he did and Shador Saunders and even Shiloh Sanders on the other side of the ball too, because people haven't been talking about him enough. I think what Colorado did in betting on themselves and believing in Dion so much, I think that is completely one of the most admirable things that we can look at in college athletics today. I think they have come out and they've admitted Colorado doesn't have the money to pay Dion yet. They said, but we will. So I think that, I'm a dreamer, and I'm not saying that we should go for Dion. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying in the world of athletics that we live in today, and you see what it's panned out for to Colorado already, not just because they won their first game, but in terms of revenue that this school is making. They sold out their spring game. All of these different aspects that Dion brings to a school like that. I think West Virginia should learn a thing or two from that. But all right, I'm off that train for a second. I just wanted to mention that. Travis Hunter is an absolute dog. Okay,
Dog.
I will.
Mhm.
I will be a fan of Travis Hunter until the day he retires from the NFL, which I hope is a long and lengthy career. But playing the positions that he is playing right now, I truly hope that they keep my man a whole locker full of B12 shots back in that locker room, so they can get him going at halftime. Because, I mean, this man has got to be in the most impeccable athletic shape I have ever seen in a human being.
Yeah, that's insane.
I know that we mentioned it the other day in the group chat, but I said, when was the last time that we seen a player that played on both sides of the ball and was that elite at both sides? I did not realize when I said that Dion for the Dallas Cowboys, I believe in the '99
I was
season,
about to say Dion was
played.
like the last one that I knew of.
Yeah. So how much sense does it make for Travis Hunter to be, a Dion
Exactly. He's going to
product?
be the modern day
My
prime
man,
time.
that was fun to watch. That was really fun to watch. I cannot.
And that running back they've got too, the 5-star that
Gus
they
Edwards, I believe. Is his name.
Edwards, yeah, he had like 3 receiving touchdowns, over 100. He's
Yeah, he
awesome
was
too,
nice.
and he's a true freshman.
Yep. I'm glad I drafted Shador Sanders in our college fantasy league, guys.
Hey, I'm glad they're coming to the Big 12. It's going to be fun to watch them in the conference.
It's gonna be fun to watch them in the conference, but I'll tell you right now, guys,
not
I
gonna be
don't
fun to
know
play
how
them.
much. Yeah, I don't know how much I'm gonna like them in about a year or two. Whenever we're gonna have to, pull
Right.
something together to beat these guys. Because the last time that we went out to Colorado, it was not such a fun trip. I don't know if
Oh,
y'all
God.
remember that, but
I remember that game all too well. We should have won that game.
absolutely.
We had that double pass to Bradley Starks, and the guy was wide open, and Bradley Starks threw it about 10 yards short of a guy with no one within anyone near of him, and yeah, we lost that game in OT. I remember that one all too well.
I really believe that was the game that really turned the fan base against. Rest in peace. I really believe that was the one that turned the fan base against Bill Stewart, because going into that game, we were not supposed to lose. Like we were.
It was a rough game.
We were heavy favorites.
Well, they were coming off that loss to East Carolina too, and we thought it was going to be the bounce back, and yeah, it was rough. It was a rough start to that season.
Yeah, it was
much like a rough start to this season. But speaking of starts of the season, continuing on our rundown of the Big 12 schedule, Oklahoma 73-0, guys, win over Arkansas State and Butch Jones. I know I saw a meme of Butch Jones being consoled by one of his players on the sideline as he was nearly in tears. Because, I mean, I felt bad for the guy. I mean, you're down 73-0. What can you do at that point? And what can you say to your coach? I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, coach. We can't do anything out here. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do you consider Oklahoma back by that?
I don't know. The offense is good again.
The
defense is going to be better, but I don't know. Arkansas State, I don't know if I can judge it with that game against them, but they're going to be better than they were last year, certainly. I'll say that.
Yeah, I believe so too. I think that I don't think they're going to be playoff potential good, but I do think they're going to be a lot better than what we've seen last year. We're going to be tested in Morgantown more than we were last year.
Yeah, I agree. Iowa State with the 30-9 win over Northern Iowa in the start and quarterback there for Iowa State. The son of Anthony Becht, Rocco Becht, gets the start for Iowa State after what happened there with Hunter Deckers and the gambling scandal there for the Cyclones. So pretty cool West Virginia connection there for the Iowa State starting quarterback.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yes. I think he's a redshirt freshman or redshirt sophomore too. He's pretty young, so yeah, he's going to be good, I think.
Nice.
And then Cincinnati dominating Eastern Kentucky 66-13. Another newcomer there getting the win. And then we're getting into some of the more interesting outcomes here, starting with this one, guys. I didn't even realize this until earlier today. I knew it was a battle, but I didn't realize that they had lost really. 42-31. Texas State beats Baylor.
Shocker. Apparently Texas State is on a mission because they came to play.
Yeah. I mean, that's a handy. I mean, 11-point win at Baylor. So
yeah,
What cracks me up is the next one that you're going about to talk about, and people have posted that score, acting like it's such an impressive win, and they posted the Jacksonville State score.
Well, I think that people are posting the Houston one because they're probably just so impressed that they held UTSA to 14 points, as bad as everyone's expecting Houston's defense to be, and that Dana had a defensive game. As
For
we're
sure.
talking about Houston beating UTSA 17-14 in a game, I think a lot of people expected UTSA to win, but the Fighting Dana Holgersons find a way to come out on top 17-14, despite not scoring in the fourth quarter. And like I said,
Hey.
that's surprising. That's a defensive battle.
I will say I don't like the guy, but those Houston uniforms, man, those Oiler throwbacks, clean.
Those
Those
were
were clean.
very, very clean.
Yes, they were.
Oklahoma State winning, but not too handedly over Central Arkansas, 27-13. And then we get another upset in the conference. This one came in double overtime late last night. On the road, Texas Tech loses to Wyoming, 35-33 in double overtime.
The Fighting Josh Allens, man.
Yeah, making Josh Allen proud there. And then our last score of week 1 of the Big 12 season, BYU does beat Sam Houston in a shutout, but BYU only puts up 14 points on offense, but that's all they needed when you don't allow Sam Houston to score. So 14-0 win for BYU. I know we didn't discuss any of those games too much at length, guys, but any of them there that you wanted to talk about more? Go ahead.
Yeah, look at that Sam Houston quarterback. He led the quarterback room, 147 yards to 3 interceptions.
Sheesh. Is that a defensive game or what?
What did that game look like?
Am I wrong, or is BYU's quarterback a familiar face from last year?
He is. He is one that said some very disparaging things about our great state as well.
I believe you're right, sir. I believe that that's extra little bit of momentum going into that game, and it doesn't look like he has the offensive firepower to lead them past anybody, especially if he can't score more than 14 points against Sam Houston.
Yeah.
Definitely smell a little bit of revenge in the air on that one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. A couple sacks coming his way.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'll say in regards to these games, I don't want to dive in on any one of them specifically, but, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think this conference is wide open, especially in terms of for West Virginia not having to play Texas and Kansas State, who are looking like two of the better teams. I know Oklahoma dominated. The Mountaineers have to play them, but looks like a lot of these other games are going to be winnable for the Mountaineers, or at least be, close contested games, it seems.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you can sneak that Texas Tech win, which I did predict in the preseason roundtable.
Yeah, you did. I'll give you that one.
You did.
It's going to be a real big momentum boost.
Yeah, he's due to beat them for sure.
I just wish that we didn't have to wait until a team is super beatable to be able to beat. You know what I mean? Like we waited so long to beat Oklahoma, and we finally did that last year. But I don't know about you guys. I don't know. It doesn't feel.
I'm glad we did it, but it doesn't feel like I beat an Oklahoma team.
Right. It doesn't feel as fully as it should.
It's like you got cucked out of your feeling that you're going to get if we beat a good Oklahoma team.
I mean, this may be what they felt like in '88 when we finally beat Penn State. but even that, I feel like that team was a very, very good Penn State team, and we were just a really good West Virginia team that year, and we beat the hell out of them. But now it's like, okay, going back when we finally beat K-State for the first time in the Big 12. I remember that was something because K-State was actually pretty good that year. And I don't know,
it was a hard-fought game too.
It was a very hard-fought game.
Our expectations as Mountaineer fans has changed for sure.
Yes, and
therein lies the issue.
Exactly. And I think that's why a lot of us are calling for his head, because we as a program, we pride ourselves. Like I seen yesterday, someone had made a comment on Facebook that our biggest mistake as a program was joining a Power 5 conference during the last conference realignment. And because this is quote unquote from this comment that I read, because we are a group of 5 school and we know it. And we should never put ourselves in a position to be in this, I guess, put ourselves to be in this position. That is the most ignorant perception that I believe that you can have. And I don't mean to
that's
bash on
ridiculous.
anybody specifically. If you're the person that commented that and you're watching this, just hear me out. Okay, so just for example, SMU just accepted a bid to go to the ACC. For the next 10 years, SMU ain't getting shit, just to put it
Nothing.
bluntly and simply. And after that 10 years, they will only receive one full part of the lowest share in that conference. Meaning, what that tells me, SMU just told the college football world, hey, we ain't worth nothing. We know it. We just want to have a seat at the table.
Yeah, that's literally what it's come to. I'm
And
telling
West
you,
Virginia
things
is
are
lucky to
changing
be
a
in.
lot starting next year in 2024, and I don't know if fans are going to enjoy the product, as much starting next season. They're already starting to not enjoy it the past couple years with transfer portal and NIL. You've already seen people complaining. I think next year when these conferences are looking crazy, multi-coastal conferences, whatever you want to call it, interest might go down. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I mean, West Virginia's already had a magnified view of it already because we've had to travel the whole distance of the country for the better part of the last decade. The rest of the country doesn't know what that's like, and we've spent however long crying out to people saying, "Hey, we can't. How are we supposed to compete when we're always this exhausted from this amount of travel?" That's what you're going to find in the next however five years or so. That's what the battle is going to be magnified. Everybody's going to find that out, and then I think eventually it'll revert back to. This has always been my belief. I think I've always shared that with you guys, that the conference realignment will find its way back to originality in some ways, because it's going to be too much chaos to be able to form. You know what I mean? Like whether it's going to be us, pulling away from the NCAA and making our own entity, or whether whatever the case may be. There is no world that it makes sense that a Stanford and Cal, or SMU for that matter, should literally be traveling the coast to coast on a weekly basis to play games. I mean, why not just move your kids to have, the California University of Kentucky or, something like that, and have your kids stay there and study there and compete from there? Like, it just makes absolute no sense to the regular eye, but it doesn't make sense to the people that actually follow this. I mean, it's complete chaos and madness. No, we haven't even gotten there yet. You have coaches speaking out against it and speaking that it's not good for the kids. So
Yeah, and I think that's where you kind of just get. I think that we're going away from like it's not going to be. It's just going to be semi-pro. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to be considered really anything to do with universities or scholastics or academics in any way. I mean, it's just going to be minor league teams funneled through universities because they've got the infrastructure to handle it. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of where it's at.
Yeah, it is. It's not sustainable. I don't think long term
no,
either. So
no. I don't know. That's a wild situation, man.
it is. It is. It's wild right now all around, college sports in general for sure. So, not just for our Mountaineers, just all around. It's a crazy time. Who knows which way things are trending, but for the Mountaineers, hopefully things start trending in a more positive direction than what we saw here in this first game. Dropping 0-1 for the third straight year. God, I hope they get back on the winning side of things like we expect them to. Coming up against Duquesne, we'll be talking more about that coming up in our preview episode that'll be releasing later this week. So be on the lookout for that one. That'll be 163 for us here on the Country Roads Webcast here as we have been discussing the Penn State review here in Season 6, Episode 162. But having said that, gentlemen, anything that we didn't touch on that you guys wanted to add here at the end, or anything you wanted to throw in here final thoughts wise? What do you got, Stephen?
Nothing really important. I know that one thing that I was going to mention, but I forgot to earlier, was that WVU is exploring name rights for the football and basketball stadiums.
Oh, yeah.
So I was maybe we can talk about that on the next show. I really wanted to get your guys' thoughts of what potential leading names would be.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like the Tudor's Biscuit World Mountaineer Field, probably.
Tudor's Biscuit World. I like it. Hey, I like it. I like it.
Yeah, that'd be fun to talk about. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to deep dive on that. I'm gonna have to brainstorm a little bit. It's interesting.
I wanted to mention it now so we didn't forget about it. We can go back and reference.
Yeah, we'll have to do it. Sounds good. Sounds good to me. Brad, what about you? Anything we didn't touch on you want to bring up here? Final thoughts?
No, more final thoughts side. I feel like I've been a little bit more critical and a little bit more negative on this podcast. And I think it's one of those things that I fully support our team. I just don't think that the team is really our issue. And so trying to separate two entities in my brain and be critical of one, but supporting the other can be a little bit difficult. But just know, I'll always support the Mountaineers, but I think that there's questions that we need to keep asking and answering.
Absolutely. That's what we're here to do. We're going to highlight the positives, but we're not going to ignore the negatives either. Going to have to try and discuss all aspects of the program. That's the fun of doing this podcast, and we've really enjoyed doing it, the past 5 years, and are enjoying it thus far here in this 6th season. Doing it here after the first game of the 2023 Mountaineer football season. And hopefully more of these will be coming after wins than losses for the remainder of the year. We'll see what happens and what direction things trend. But appreciate everyone that's tuned into this episode, whether you viewed it or listened to it. We appreciate you taking it in either way. Check us out on YouTube, Country Roads Webcast, same on all podcast platforms, and on Facebook and Instagram. But if you want to find us on Twitter/X, you can do that at WVU Country Roads. Check out the content on WVSportsNow.com, where you can also find our show. And like I said, be on the lookout for the preview podcast releasing later this week, and plenty of content coming up on our YouTube channel in the meantime and in between time. But having said that, that'll wrap us up here on our Penn State review and reaction episode. For my awesome co-hosts, Big Bubba Brad, CRW there on Twitter/X, Bradley, and Steven, who you can find on Twitter as well at Pitt Still Sucks. Until next time, we are the Country Roads Webcast team, and as always, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those